It's something that's better when it's thick instead of thin.
A person.
When he tried to leave after putting down some exclusive pipe.
You a crazy man. You crazy. What you mean you see me later? You live here now. Yeah. You thought you was gonna do that to me last night and what?
But you said you weren't looking for no man.
That was before you was hitting me like that last night, my boy. Yeah, that was before. I wasn't looking for no man, but God sent me one. See, when God sent you, who am I to block my blessings?
The last time Lexus Antrom was on camera, she was smiling. Not a posed smile, not a performance, not the type of smile that you practice in front of the camera. It was that type of a smile that one has when he believes that the worst of his life is over. When you've gotten round it, you think that the man sitting next to you is the cause of the reason that it will remain so. The video was posted by her husband himself, called her his favorite girl, tagged her, hit upload, allowed the internet to view what he actually wanted them to view. That video is still up. Lexus isn't.
That's right, Rosalind. Disturbing information according to the mother. Her daughter was shot and killed in front of her own children by her husband.
February 12th, 2026. It is about 4 in the morning. Columbus, Georgia. An apartment on the Gardiner Drive. Columbus police officers investigate a shooting case. On arrival, they discovered 28-year-old Lexus Antrom in the house, unresponsive. She'd been shot. Not once, not twice, 7 times. Next door, her 2 sons were asleep, one 7 years and one 13 years old. They were not sleeping anymore. Kevon Davenport, 22, who was her husband, was also on the scene, with his own gunshot wound. He informed police that it was self-defense. Self-defense. Remember that word. We're going to come back to it. The following day, he was accused of murder. This is file number 0212, and in this, the camera surveillance fails to record the crime. It catches something worse. It catches the mask, the months of performance, the curated devotion, the online history of a man who created an alibi out of love.
Quick shout out to our subscriber who commented yesterday.
Paul Christian Neem, 7860.
You opened the file. You stayed. You do not know how important that is. You see, if you have been watching these cases, you know already that files do not close themselves. When this one will not come to sit well with you as the others, persevere to the end. There's a reason for that. This case is heard by most people, and the question that would be coming to them is what happened that night? What was the argument about? What had happened at 4 a.m. in Gardiner Drive? Wrong question. The question is, what then was going on the other nights, since the argument on February 12th occurred not out of the sky? There are arguments among partners on a daily basis. They happen in every home. They occur at 4 a.m. when one is unable to sleep and the other person offended him. That's marriage. That's life. That's Tuesday. Yet arguments are no more likely to make 7 gunshot wounds. Rage does. And rage has a history. It does not open its eyes in the morning and choose to live. It builds, quietly. The doors of bathrooms and after a banged cabinet. It is disguised under mass love and Instagram captions and flowers sent on some random Wednesday. It is waiting, not until somebody has a reason to blow, but when no one is watching. And here's the thing, nobody was watching. Not her mother, not her brothers, not her friends. The individuals on the comments page with the heart emojis on the posts about Kevon. Nobody. That wasn't an accident. That was architecture. Lexus Antrom was brought up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Tanisha Shields had one daughter, Tanisha. The two were intimate, not in the sense to which many people tend to refer when they talk of relations between kinsmen, but in a sense that was intentional, protective, built on something specific. Lexus lost her grandmother when she was a child. Domestic violence. Her grandmother was shot and killed by the husband, and the weapon turned on her. January 16th, 1999. No arrest, no trial, no testimony, no answers. Only 2 individuals were killed, and a family left to find out what the silence was about. Think about that for a second. Tanisha lost her mother to the man who was to be the mother partner, her protector, the man in whose presence she had dinner. And that was a burden that she took into all her future choices in life, especially in the rearing of Lexus. She watched for the signs, every boyfriend, every relationship. Tanisha's radar was up every time Lexus said a name of a man, not because she was domineering. She could see the end then. She had experienced the consequences. She was aware of what the crime scene of love was, and she vowed never to put her daughter in that same position. That was the history that Lexus was brought up knowing about. She was aware of the impact on her family as a result of domestic violence, and she still elected to believe that her story would be different, that she was able to love and be secure, and that the cycle might be broken. She wasn't naive, she was hopeful. There's a difference, and that difference matters. Lexus was expressive, outgoing, loud in the best way. She pursued music, she modeled, she rapped, she experimented with reality shows. She was not sitting somewhere in the corner and waiting until someone brought her a future. She was creating one, brick by brick, post by post, song by song. And all she was creating with her children in mind. Every plan that she had was centered on her 2 boys.
She transferred to Columbus, Georgia. Military town, strong community ties. The nature of the place where individuals wave at one another on their porches, and the crime, which does occur, remains to be personal, behind closed doors, between neighbors who are acquainted, and not the type of city that is covered by national news. She believed that she was beginning a new life. You are still present, which means you are already a subject of this investigation. And this is if this is the first file you have. This is what we do. We open the record, we read every line, and we don't look away. Kevon Davenport was 6 years junior to Lexus, 22 years old, and through all accounts available to us who knew him, he was well presented, polite, respectful. He called Tanisha Mom. He brought Lexus flowers. He was present for the kids. He did the things that cause a mother-in-law to give a sigh of relief and reason, perhaps this one is different. Another social media activity that he had was acting like a press release about an ideal marriage. Photos together, videos together, public affection, headings that put a bride and groom to the test, the type of content that causes strangers on the comments section to write goals and label their own partners. He was not only in an affair with Lexus, he was performing one, daily, publicly, aggressively. It gets worse. Not to mention, those posts were not affection only, they were insulation. All the photos, all the captions, all the videos being tagged, all the stories reposted, all of it created a wall. Not between himself and the external world, but between the truth and someone who might have been listening. His social media was not a glimpse into the relationship. It was a door that had a welcome mat and was locked. He knew what he was doing. The flowers did not come out of the blue. It was not respect in the yes ma'am to Tanisha. It was strategy. Each and every act of worship was not only to put her at ease, but to have everyone consider that she was. That's not love. Control in a costume. After Tanisha lost her daughter, she made a statement. It was simple. He had fooled me. Let that land. A woman who had 27 years of high alertness, a woman who lost her own mother in a domestic violence and had adjusted her whole life towards ensuring that it did not repeat. A woman who was more familiar with the signals than most expert activists. She gazed at this man and failed to see it. It is not Tanisha who failed. That's how good the mask was. That was how performance was to be calculated to work on a person who had to be particularly watching to get the message. Following the death of Lexus, one of her colleagues stepped up, someone from Lexus's job. She informed Tanisha about the marriage, things that Tanisha had never heard, even hidden details that Lexus kept, even to her mother, even on the part of the woman she was most closely acquainted with in the world. What these details were, we know not quite, but we know the effect. It was a heartbreak to Tanisha, and we understand what it is. Lexus was bearing an envelope that she could not share. She held it within herself because she felt shame, or feared, or was loyal, or in some measure a mixture of all three. and the person that might have brought her out of it was that person she could not tell. This is the way the domestic violence is. It doesn't just trap the body, it isolates the voice. Let's slow down. Let's have a look at what actually is in this file. Not speculation, not commentary, but what do we know, bit by bit. The scene, a house on Gardiner Drive in Columbus, Georgia. The shooting took place in the house at around 4 a.m. The shooting began in another room where the children were sleeping. It was not a social fight, not a street dispute, no fist fight at a bar or parking lot. It happened inside the home, the last place that Lexus was expected to be safe, the location of her children who were 10 feet apart. The victim, Lexus Antrom, 28 years old, mother of 2. To begin with, she was shot thrice, and when the family was notified about this, they were told she was dead. They processed that, tried to make sense of it, hung on to the possibility that it might have been not as bad as it was being made. Then came the correction. She was shot 7 times. There is a distance between 3 and 7 that is not that of numbers only. It's psychological. 3 shots can be reactive, impulsive, a breakdown of disastrous proportion. 7 shots is sustained. 7 is the trigger was pulled and pulled and pulled again and again and again. The gun was not set aside after the first firing, or the second, or the third. 7 shots is a judgment that is repeated 6 times. The suspect, Kevon Davenport, 22 years old, discovered on the scene with a gunshot wound, self-claimed as a self-defense when first contacted by a police officer, arrested and accused of murder on February 13, 2026, the following day. That is a telling speed of that charge. Whenever the charge is filed under self-defense and the assertion is made within 24 hours, it is normally because the physical evidence on the scene was in direct opposition to the narrative. The location of bodies, the trajectory of the rounds, the location of the weapon, something didn't match.
The children. 2 boys, 7 and 13 years old. They were in the next room. They heard the shots. They heard their mother die. They didn't see it happen, but they heard it. And for 2 boys that age, the difference between seeing and hearing is almost meaningless. The sound is the memory now. That's what they carry. The digital record. Kevon's social media accounts remain active. The videos, the photos, the captions. Every single post now functions as a piece of evidence, not of a loving relationship, but of a deliberate public narrative. The posts were curated, timed, framed, and now they sit on the internet like exhibits in a case file that nobody filed. A smiling video captioned "My favorite girl," posted by a man who would later shoot that same girl 7 times in their own home. Let that math run in your head for a second. The pattern. This is the part of the file that doesn't fit neatly into an evidence bag, but it belongs here. Lexus's grandmother was murdered by her husband in 1999. Tanisha lost her mother and never got answers. The killer took his own life. 27 years later, Tanisha's only daughter is murdered by her husband. The generational loop didn't just repeat, it tightened. It found the one person Tanisha had spent her whole life trying to protect. This isn't coincidence. This is a pattern of vulnerability that domestic violence exploits across generations. The trauma doesn't skip, it searches. Here's what we know about the timeline.
I just talked to her a couple of days ago. We were making plans to go on a family trip.
Days before the shooting, Lexus and her mother had spoken on the phone. They were making plans for a family trip. Normal conversation, future-facing, the kind of call you make when you think you have time. At some point before February 12th, Kevon had called Tanisha himself. He told her that he and Lexus had been arguing about something. He didn't go into detail. Tanisha, respecting the boundary between a parent and an adult child's marriage, tried to give the best advice she could without overstepping. She didn't know the full picture. She didn't know it was like this, as she later put it.
Then, 4 a.m. February 12th, the argument escalated. Gunfire erupted inside the residence. Lexus was shot 7 times. Kavan sustained a gunshot wound. The children were in the next room. When officers arrived, Lexus was unresponsive. She was pronounced dead. Kavan was found wounded and conscious. He said it was self-defense. The detectives weren't buying it. By the next day, murder charges were filed. Tanisha found out by phone. The family wasn't sure what had happened at first. They made calls, hospital, police, anybody who might have information. The nurse at the hospital couldn't give specifics, just told them they needed to get to Georgia immediately. They had to gather money to make the trip. Think about that. Your daughter is dead in another state, and before you can grieve, you have to figure out how to afford the gas, or the bus ticket, or the plane fare to get to her body. Grief doesn't wait for your bank account to clear. Then came the logistics, the relentless, suffocating logistics of death when the person who died is in the wrong state. Lexus's body was in Georgia. Her family was in Philadelphia. The body needed to be transported home. The children needed to be retrieved and brought back. Funeral arrangements had to be made from 500 miles away. A GoFundMe was created, not because the family wanted charity, but because there was no other option. Tanisha said it clearly, "I'm one of them ones that don't like to ask, but I've been asking." She went public with everything, recorded videos, tagged bloggers, tagged news outlets, tagged social media personalities. She was trying, desperately, to get her daughter's name beyond the Columbus, Georgia local news cycle. She said she'd barely gotten responses. That tells you something uncomfortable, not about Tanisha's effort, about the ecosystem. A mother loses her daughter to domestic violence the same way she lost her own mother 27 years ago, and she has to stand in front of a phone camera and beg the internet to pay attention. She has to market her grief just to get someone to share a GoFundMe link. Her cousin also went live, asking for help, asking if anyone knew of domestic violence organizations that handle transportation, burial assistance, child relocation, the kind of practical, ugly, expensive aftermath that nobody thinks about until they're standing inside it. A balloon release was held in Lexus's honor. Family and community members gathered. They let the balloons go and watched them rise. The balloons went up. Lexus didn't come back. If this case is pulling something out of you right now, a memory, a name you haven't thought about in a while, drop a comment. You don't have to explain. Just type, "I remember." Sometimes the file opens something in you that you didn't know was still there. Here's the part people can't stop talking about. The part that turns comment sections into courtrooms. The social media posts. Not Lexus's, Kavan's. This man built an entire digital identity around being the perfect husband, the devoted partner, the family man who shows up with flowers and calls his wife his favorite girl in front of the whole internet. And he didn't do it casually. He did it consistently, repeatedly, like someone maintaining an alibi in real time. Because that's what it was. Social media isn't just communication anymore. For someone like Kavan, it was armor. Every post said the same thing without saying it. Look at us. Look how good this is. Look how happy she is. Who would believe anything different? And that's the calculation. That's what makes people lose their minds in the comments. Because the contrast between the online image and the crime scene isn't just disturbing, it's engineered. He didn't just happen to post nice things about his wife. He constructed a public-facing version of reality that made the private version invisible. The flowers weren't gestures of love. They were receipts, evidence he could point to later if anyone ever questioned him. The politeness to the mother-in-law wasn't character. It was infiltration. He wasn't joining a family. He was disarming the one person in that family who had spent decades looking for exactly what he was hiding. And the self-defense claim. Let's sit with that one. A man shoots his wife 7 times inside their shared home at 4 a.m. while their children, her children, sleep in the next room. And his first move isn't remorse, isn't panic, isn't calling for help while holding her body. His first move is a legal strategy, self-defense. 2 words designed to reframe a murder as a reasonable response. Think about the composure that requires. Think about what kind of mind can stand in a room with a woman he just killed and 2 traumatized children on the other side of the wall and decide, calmly, deliberately, which story gives him the best chance of walking free. That's the infuriation factor, not just the violence, the planning, the awareness, the coldness of a man who knew exactly what he was doing, before, during, and after. We need to talk about the timeline one more time. Not the night of, the bigger timeline, the one that stretches across decades and refuses to let this family go. January 16th, 1999. Tanisha's mother is murdered by her husband. He kills himself afterward. No arrest, no trial, no sentencing, no closure. Just a double funeral and a daughter left to grieve without answers for the rest of her life. January 14th, 2026, Tanisha's estranged husband passes away. They were separated but still legally married. She's processing that loss, privately, quietly, when the next call comes. February 12th, 2026, her only daughter is murdered by her daughter's husband in her daughter's home in front of her daughter's children. 3 losses, all connected to the men who were supposed to be partners. 2 of them murders, 27 years apart, and the wound is identical. The weapon is different, the address is different, the name on the report is different, but the betrayal is exactly the same. Tanisha posted about it publicly. She wrote, "This is like deja vu all over again." Deja vu doesn't cover it. Deja vu is when you feel like you've seen something before. This isn't a feeling. This is a fact. She has seen this before. She lived through it before, and now she's living through it again. Except this time it's her daughter on the floor and her grandchildren in the next room, and she's the one left standing with no answers. Again. She said something else, something that should be heard without commentary or filter. It's okay to leave. It really is. It's okay to leave. Because if you don't leave, you can end up like my daughter and like my mother. She's not giving advice from a pamphlet. She's not reading a hotline script. She's speaking from a bloodline of proof, 2 generations of evidence, and she's begging, not asking, begging for someone to listen before there's a third.
What was Kayvon's history before Lexus? Were there prior incidents, prior partners who experienced similar patterns, prior charges, restraining orders, complaints, or reports that went nowhere? What did the co-worker tell Tanisha? What had Lexus been enduring in silence? How long had it been going on? And why, with a mother who would have come running, who had lived through this exact thing, did Lexus feel she couldn't say a word? What does the forensic evidence show about the positioning inside that bedroom, the trajectories of the rounds, the sequence of fire, the location of the weapon when officers arrived? Does the physical scene support self-defense in any possible interpretation, or does it dismantle the claim entirely? How did a 22-year-old man build such a convincing public facade that even a mother who had specifically trained herself to detect domestic violence could not see through it? And the question underneath all of them, the one that doesn't have an answer in any police file or courtroom proceeding, how many other women are sitting in a home right now with a man whose social media says "my favorite girl," whose manners are impeccable, whose flowers arrive on time, and whose private behavior tells a completely different story? That's not a rhetorical question. If a name crossed your mind just now, if a face appeared, that's the file trying to tell you something. Type "look closer" in the comments. Not for us, for them.
Lexus Antrom was 28 years old. She was a mother, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a friend, a creator who wanted to be seen and heard and who refused to stay quiet about her dreams. She moved to Georgia believing she was starting fresh, building a life outside the cycle that had haunted her family for a generation. She posted her music. She dreamed about acting. She planned family trips. She loved her kids with a ferocity that shaped every decision she made. Days before she died, she was on the phone with her mother, talking about the future. Her last images online show her smiling. Her husband's last posts show him performing love. And somewhere between those two sets of content, between her real smile and his manufactured one, the truth was hiding in plain sight, visible to no one, dangerous to one person. But the last record is never the full truth. That's what these files teach us every single time. The footage shows what someone wanted you to see. The file shows what actually happened. And the gap between those two things is where people get hurt, where people die, where children lose their mothers at 4 a.m. and carry the sound of it for the rest of their lives. The footage said happy couple. The file says 7 gunshots while 2 boys slept 10 feet away. Kayvon Davenport has been charged with murder. He is currently awaiting legal proceedings. The courts will determine the outcome, but the file is already open, and files don't close just because someone wants them to. If you or someone you know is in a dangerous situation, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24 hours a day at 1-800-799-7223. You can also text START to 887-888. This was file number 0212, Columbus, Georgia, Lexus Antrom. If this case made you think about someone whose online presence looks flawless, someone who always says the right thing at the right time, someone whose partner has gone quieter than they used to be, someone who stopped calling, leave one word in the comments. Just type "look closer." Because sometimes the file doesn't open itself. Sometimes you have to be the one who reaches for it. And sometimes that reach is the only thing standing between someone you care about and a case number. We'll see you in the next one.